No other sport has changed more in the 85 years that Grand Prix have been run than the world of motor racing. This is perhaps due to the interest represented, the costs that it engenders, and the inherent dangers. But more than any of those, it is because the sport is more intricately allied to technical progress than any other, and that demands adaptation and many other restrictions. Until the end of the 60s, however, the development of cars, circuits, rules and procedures simply took their own rather haphazard course. Under the aegises of an easy-going governing body, the powerful organisers of Grand Prix did their own thing as they wished. In fact, they made sure that the importance of their individual races virtually eclipsed that of the championship, and they ensured that their own importance was such that they were able to work exclusively to their own ends. The result was that only the cars made progress, while each individual organiser, jealous of his own patch, remained an individual. The competitors, however prestigious, simply had to accept their lot and improvise where necessary. However, from the start of the 70s, the circuit organisers were brought more and more into line as the increasingly professional competitors pushed the International Federation to implement strict common regulations. Now, each of the 16 Grand Prix that make up the Formula One World Championship is run to a rigid schedule, and the governing body ensures that it is strictly adhered to. The timetable, the order of practice sessions and race day schedule, scrutineering, press conferences, the allocation of pits, accreditation, and even the position of motorhomes in the paddock are all pre-arranged and are identical from race to race throughout the season. So now there is no need nor room for improvisation. Each team, even before it leaves home for a race, knows what to expect. Apart from trips to overseas races, cars and equipment are taken to races by magnificent, purpose-built transporters rivaling one another in prestige and power. Basically, the race has already begun. The aim is to be in position and operational from the Thursday afternoon before a Grand Prix, ready for the first practice sessions, which will generally take place on the Friday. Once in position, the frail Formula One cars are unloaded to be placed in their garages. Generally speaking, there are 3 cars available for 2 drivers, one being the spare or T car, T for training, and the drivers having one each. The rest of the truck is filled up with several tons of wheels, engines, spare parts, tools and pit equipment. The spares are closely monitored, as every part on the car has a limited life, and in order to ensure the driver's safety, parts are changed at regular intervals. The drivers often arrive in their own private aeroplanes. Olivier Grouillard, the French driver who was with Ligier in 1989, is going to act as our guide through a Grand Prix weekend. He will reveal some of the secrets of the pits and take us through doors normally closed to the media to give us the driver's eye view of the weekend's events. It's Friday morning. Practice is due to start shortly and the procedure will be the same on Saturday. After many years of 90 minutes, starting at 10, the morning session was cut to 45 minutes starting at 9:45 in 1993. As many as 30 cars can go out on the circuit at one time, but there is a maximum of 26 starters per Grand Prix. Any more than 30 entries results in a pre-qualifying session opening the weekend's events.
Il faut donc en 2 fois 1 heure et demie arriver à déterminer et des réglages de qualification pour avoir la meilleure place sur la grille de départ et des réglages de course pour que votre voiture soit le mieux adaptée pendant la course, avec les courses et avec le maximum d'essence dans la voiture.
The morning sessions do not count towards the driver's grid position. They are simply for setting up the car for the driver.
On ne vous demande pas d'être au maximum de la voiture et il est préférable de bien se concentrer sur les réactions et sur le comportement de votre voiture pour bien arriver et à l'analyser et à donner le maximum d'informations à l'ingénieur et à l'équipe pour modifier la voiture et la rendre plus performante.
Il y a un truc qui va pas, Richard. Il faut qu'on se dépêche à trouver ce que c'est ou alors on saute sur la voiture. Le seul truc qu'on peut y avoir, c'est les pressions qui sont 10 fois trop hautes par rapport à ce qu'on avait fait la dernière fois. Le temps n'est pas le même, etc. De notre information, quand je freine, je suis en survirage, c'est-à-dire je pars comme si hop, de suite à décrocher de l'arrière. Ça me donne l'impression qu'on a beaucoup déroulé sur l'avant parce que tu regardes les 100, 180, 160. Je refais deux tours mais avec beaucoup moins de pression. Un 250 et un 150 à l'arrière pour voir si ça vient de là.
The understanding and relationship which a driver has with his engineer, who is responsible for setting up his car, is one of the most important factors regarding a driver's performance in motorsport. The driver has to describe accurately how his car is behaving and its reaction to changes. The engineer has to analyse the information that he receives in order to eliminate the faults and to work out the best solution. To do this, there is a whole range of elements that can be changed, and changed quickly. Formula One cars are specifically built so that this can happen. It's essential because not only do circuits themselves change from one to another, but track conditions at the same circuit can change. It's repetitive, detailed work, but essential not only to a car's grid position, but to its performance in the race itself. The parameters are more numerous when it comes to the engine, but electronics have replaced the driver in providing information for the engineers. They have readouts and monitors with which to oversee, analyse and if necessary modify their super sophisticated and powerful machines. While the cars are out on the circuit, microprocessors on the engines record and transmit information to the pits, where the engine technicians can simultaneously follow everything that is going on in their engines, for lap after lap. And once the morning's session is over, engineers and technicians, plus the drivers, meet behind closed doors in the team's motorhome.
Le but du briefing, bien entendu, c'est de faire une synthèse de la séance d'essai qui vient de se dérouler. Il faut avoir une démarche très rationnelle. La première des choses à faire, c'est par exemple les gros problèmes. Si vous avez un problème moteur, est-ce qu'il faut le changer, est-ce qu'il ne faut pas le changer? Si vous avez un problème de frein, si vous avez un problème d'embrayage par exemple, s'il y a des grosses modifications à faire sur la voiture, il faut le dire très vite, faire un choix très rapidement pour que les mécaniciens puissent changer telle ou telle pièce sur la voiture. Après, c'est un dialogue avec l'ingénieur pour savoir le choix de pneus que l'on va faire pour les qualifications ou pour la course. Et là aussi, il faut aller assez vite aussi parce que vous n'avez plus le droit de changer 30 minutes avant la séance de qualification.
Between the sessions, there is a hive of activity in the paddock around the tyre suppliers. The morning's tyres have to be stripped off and new tyres mounted for qualifying in the afternoon. What are the various different demands on tyres?
The problem here is speed. We're not going for distance. If we wanted to go for distance, we wouldn't go as fast, we could go much longer. So speed is the whole criteria for qualifying. And the faster you make it, the less long it's going to go.
The super sticky, short-lived qualifiers are no longer used, but race tyres are best in their first few laps. What's the difference between qualifiers and race tyres?
Basically, the construction is the same as a racing tire, but the compound is much, much softer. It's intended to get hot very fast, grip very good, and not necessary to last very long. All you want is heat and grip for a very short period of time.
Before changes in 1993, each driver was able to use just 8 tyres per hour-long qualifying session. Marshals and officials checked each car as it went out to ensure that it was using tyres within that allocation. The limitation of tyres is an attempt to iron out the advantages of the wealthier teams able to buy many more sets than the less well-off teams. But it also means that tyre companies don't have to bring the more than 3,000 tyres they already have to transport to circuits. Once mounted on their rims, the tyres are placed in small ovens or the tyre covers that keep them warm once they are mounted on the cars themselves prior to the driver going out onto the circuit. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This is the most intense part of the weekend, apart from the start of the race itself. Qualifying on Friday and Saturday was 1 hour. Now it's 45 minutes, and in that time, drivers must try and set the best times for one lap that they can. The timing for all Grand Prix was originally established by Longines and Olivetti, although Tag Heuer recently succeeded Longines.
Aujourd'hui, le chronométrage est entièrement électronique. Nous avons 3 systèmes différents. Le premier système, c'est l'identification par un émetteur qui est monté sur une voiture, et au moment où la voiture passe la ligne d'arrivée, il y a un signal qui est donné directement dans la cabine de chronométrage. Au même endroit, il y a encore une photocellule qui prend par la coupure de la lumière. Ça donne aussi un signal dans la cabine. Ça, c'est le deuxième système. Il y a un troisième système. Ça, c'est le système vidéo. Nous avons créé une caméra qui filme le point de l'arrivée avec 100 images par seconde. Et on a donné à chaque image une impulsion de temps. C'est-à-dire, nous pouvons, avec ça, prouver un temps.
It's a short, sharp competition, drivers on the line for a matter of a couple of minutes, no room for error, everything to play for. The times appear as they happen on timing monitors linked directly to the control tower, giving an immediacy to the whole operation. Without doubt, the master of the art is Ayrton Senna, the out-and-out record holder for the number of pole positions. No one else but he has so successfully managed to combine intense concentration, total determination, utter commitment and risk-taking. Ayrton Senna is a phenomenon in qualifying, a demon. When he's on the track, all his rivals hold their breath as they anxiously follow him around the circuit. He is the standard against whom everyone else is judged. All eyes are upon him. After a relatively slow warm-up lap to bring in his tyres to the correct working temperature and condition, Ayrton flies, wringing from the tyres, his car, its engine and himself the very last ounce of performance as he practices his art. Another pole position. Once more, Senna has won the race against the clock. But like every other driver, however, he is subject to the same checks and scrutiny by officials. Here, the car is being weighed to ensure that it doesn't weigh less than the minimum imposed by the regulations. Should it do so, Senna's time could be disallowed. But Senna and his team don't need to cheat to be quickest. For the media, then, the story will be the same. Senna on pole again will be flashed around the world by the army of journalists, which covers motor racing in numbers only rivalled by the Olympic Games and the Football World Cup. Saturday evening, the battle for pole has been rough and has left its mark. Neither the bodywork on the cars, battered by curbs, nor the hard-working engines pushed to their limits have been spared. Even then, not all drivers will have qualified for the race. The slowest will have been excluded. But the engines and gearboxes of the 26 drivers who have qualified will be checked and very often changed for the race itself. Thus begins a long evening for the unsung heroes of Grand Prix racing, the mechanics, who will fastidiously check every component and element of their machines. It's race day, the culmination of everyone's efforts. Wise spectators arrive early on Sunday morning so as not to miss the half-hour warm-up session. This has no influence on the grid order, for that is already settled. But it allows the drivers to run their cars in race conditions rather than in qualifying trim, and there's a big difference. Now race distance is taken into account. Instead of being almost empty, fuel tanks are brim full to their 200-litre capacity. Wheels are now fitted with hard tyres whose efficiency will last much longer. The engines are adjusted to improve fuel consumption. Aerodynamics are changed. For those further back, the aerodynamic load is eased to facilitate overtaking rather than to give maximum grip under braking and in corners. The warm-up is the final opportunity to test for race conditions. But there's only half an hour available. Even so, in that time, a hierarchy emerges that some believe is much more representative of race form than the time set in qualifying. They suggest that brilliant qualifiers aren't necessarily the best strategists.
Take up your correct starting position. I will give
During the morning, the drivers and their team managers are called to a briefing by the governing body. There's a studious atmosphere. Here they are reminded of the principal procedures to come, late changes to the regulations. There are questions, answers. There's advice and warnings from the president of the federation, whose English, unintentionally, offsets the serious tone of the proceedings.
And all the drivers in the world are looking after you in the TV because they think stupidly that you are an example.
Discipline and fair play seem to be the message, meted out by the president of the governing body and the clerk of the course. Suitably berated, the little class of the world's best drivers disperses, each driver going off to concentrate on the race to come, sitting quietly, working out last-minute points in the 2 hours before the race. It will be physically tiring, so that many, such as three-time world champion Nelson Piquet, have a massage in order to prepare themselves for the rigours to come.
La première contrainte, c'est la variation brusque de vitesse. La variation brusque de vitesse, elle se produit dans les virages pris à prise rapide. Il y a aussi les décélérations et les accélérations qui sont des variations brusques de vitesse et qui soumettent le corps à des contraintes énormes. Donc il faut que le muscle du cou en particulier réagisse. Et puis vous savez, tourner un volant de Formule 1, c'est pas les leviers de vitesse, c'est pas des boîtes automatiques, du moins pas tout le monde malheureusement. Et ça demande des bras, beaucoup d'efforts. Oui. En plus de l'effort musculaire, il y a l'effort cérébral. Le cerveau est un organe qui lui-même est un très grand consommateur d'oxygène et de sucre. Et ça, il ne faut pas l'oublier. Et la tension soutenue pendant 1h30 est grande consommatrice d'énergie.
Baladier is also a specialist in diets.
Petit à petit, on s'est aperçu que bien se nourrir, c'était important. Et dans tous les sports de haut niveau, maintenant, on fait attention à ce qu'on mange, à ce qu'on boit. Et c'est tout à fait naturel, on est fait de ce qu'on mange. Hein. Alors, les jours de course, il faut amener les substances nécessaires. Donc, c'est classique, c'est-à-dire ce sont les sucres lents, ça va être à base de pâtes et de fruits, de salade de fruits, quoi.
Others have less rigorous preparations. Journalists, like VIPs, look after the inner man prior to the afternoon's labours. Spectators feast their eyes on the focal points of the weekend as the cars receive last-minute attention. There are many attractions, almost sideshows, as the Grand Prix draws near. But tension is mounting. 10 minutes before the pits are open, drivers like gladiators march to their pits to find their cars. The pits are open for 15 minutes. All the cars must now come out onto the grid. During this time, they can do as many laps as they like, the very last laps, to test for any uncertainties. The level of concentration mounts again. Waiting in the heat in Brazil, for example, is another burden for a driver and his car. Fuel tanks are protected. Dry ice cools the radiators. Patrese uses a refrigerated skull cap to keep a cool head. Drink bottles are fitted to cars to combat dehydration, a driver can lose between 3 and 4 kilos during a race. Some drivers use neck straps to hold their heads upright in corners where they may be subjected to 4G or more. But now the driver is alone as the countdown begins. The field will do one more parade lap, which will bring them back to the starting grid. They bring their tyres up to temperature. The cacophony produced by 26 hybrid engines no longer worries the drivers. They are completely isolated from the outside world. They hear nothing, see nothing. Their concentration is at its peak as doubt and fear raise pulse rates. This is the moment of truth. The first few laps are the most dangerous. Wheels are inches from one another as the drivers defend their positions or attempt to overtake. A car laden with 200 litres of fuel is hard to control. It is now that most of the incidents occur. Accidents rarely allow a driver time to be frightened, but they often mean an early end to the day. In the pits, however, the car's progress is eagerly and anxiously followed by the team. He should be here by now. What happened to him? Ah, there he is. That wasn't him. Hope and disappointment are just two of the emotions felt in constant and quick succession, with accompanying powerlessness, even uselessness. Now everything is down to the driver. Little can be done in the pits. It was different during the turbo era of the 80s. Refuelling was then permitted during a Grand Prix so that team members shouldered considerable responsibility, equal to the amount of danger. An error not only threatened a car's participation, but its driver's safety. Now, pit stops increasingly revolve around the necessity for new tyres. It's a less dangerous exercise and promotes a race within a race. The best teams can change 4 wheels in under 5 seconds, thanks to air hammers, intensive training and meticulous organisation. Grand Prix are held over a distance of around 300 kilometres, and they last around 90 minutes, depending on the circuit. It demands an incredible mental effort on behalf of the driver. No other sport involving speed and risk demands such long periods of total concentration. The body, too, suffers, particularly as progress in the properties of materials used in tyres and aerodynamics now mean that drivers can be subjected to 5G. Consequently, drivers have to be real athletes. "16 times a year, motor racing's traditional checkered flag greets the hero of the day. Winning a Grand Prix is not the privilege of many. Between 1950 and 1990, 40 years, just 68 drivers have shared victory in the 500 Grand Prix run in that time. It's a sport that is so hard fought that even those who finish in the top 6 and score World Championship points regard their feat as a minor victory. But while the last glorious act of the day's play is being enacted, the scenery is being taken down elsewhere. With Grand Prix taking place every 2 weeks, there is scarcely a moment to lose for either winners or also-rans in getting the cars back to their factories and preparing for the next race. It's partially thanks to this frenetic calendar, not counting private testing, that teams comprise as many as 200 people. Now begins another race, that of getting back to France, Britain or Italy, the 3 main countries involved in Formula One.